to get to an eddy really quickly and easily. This meeting is being recorded, apparently, that's good. Um, so yeah, back to, so normally, yeah, I look for an eddy or a stopping point to where I can get to quickly and easily without, any consequences. And I can kind of reset, because obviously if something goes wrong and you have to use your plan B, you're gonna reset a little. But sometimes you need that option. If you don't have the option to kind of go into somewhere calm and relax and get your bearings again, then things get a little more complicated from there. But I always like to look for, I call them my plan B or my backup plan. Beyond that, obviously, you want to look at safety. So, like, I'll show you some rapids. I'm going to bring up a couple of rapids that I've recently, once I'm done kind of just with this brief. And safety is a big part of it because they're part of your backup plan. So, if there's something that's going to go wrong, obviously having the correct safety in place is going to help worlds, and it's going to make it a lot more mellow and less stressful for you, which also gives you a higher chance of actually doing the rapid well, because you're going to be more relaxed. You're going to be thinking more about your paddling than, oh my God, what happens if this goes wrong? Because you have your crew there to help you in whatever situation you happen to get yourself into. Next up, once you've kind of checked through all those boxes of like, okay, you know what? I think I can do this. My safety's good. I feel good. That's also very important. Then I like to go to my 3 sections separately, and I like to look at the water. Now, when I say look at the water, I don't just mean look at the big hole or big rock that's in your way and just stare at it. That's not what you want to do. So I always like to take a positive approach, because at this point, when I've decided to look and run a rapid, and I'm this far into the process, it's really important for me that I've acknowledged the consequences, but I'm not focusing on them. Because if more you focus on a consequence, the higher it is that you're going to get so fixated on that you're going to end up actually going there. So you want to acknowledge those consequences, put them to the side, and then look at what the water's doing. So that being said, it's not just like, oh, look at these main features, whatever. I like to look at where there's green water. I like to look at where there's curlers. I like to look at where there's eddy lines or boils, or which way the water is pulsing. And when it does pulse up, which way it tends to push more. Obviously, any form of wave, because those can really help you. If you're slightly off on your line, using a curler or a wave just a little bit with your hip or something, that can put you right back where you need to go. Also looking at where eddies are. Like I said, I already mentioned that they're good plan Bs, and they're also just good to know where they are, because you could accidentally, get caught in some slack water, and that could mess with you a little bit. So just acknowledging where all those things are, and like I said, not dreading them or not pinpointing them and just fixating on them, but acknowledging all of them, being like, okay, if I get pushed to this side of the river, look, I can use that boil to push me back to the right, because that's the way the water's flowing back. So there's always little plan Bs and stuff that you can kind of acknowledge and have in the back of your mind in case you are a little bit off, because it is the river. You're going to end up where you go sometimes, and that's just what it is. And yeah, besides that, now I'm going to pull up some rapids and actually give you guys a visual as to what I mean. So let me just get screen sharing started. I'm not the most tech savvy person, so I apologize. Alrighty, so hopefully you guys can all see my screen now. So this is Big Falls. It's on the South Fork of the Payette River. I ran it in 2020, and I believe to this day it's one of the highest ascents ever done. I'm not really sure. I don't pay attention to that too much. But basically, it's a 3-tier drop. So you have this first tier here. It's a big boof, big hole. Then you have this second tier, which has a little wave hole, and then obviously a really big drop. And then you have this last drop, which has a big hole. You can't see it super well. When I saw the rapid, it's something I considered running until 2020, because it was always really big and scary. But for some reason, I was just paddling by it one day, and I was looking at the line, and I was like, I think this is something I actually might want to do. So obviously this rapid is super big consequence. This bottom hole right here is well known for being really, really hard to get out of. So yeah, definitely wasn't a spot that I wanted to mess up. So obviously most of my thought process was all about this bottom hole and what happened if I went into it not the way I wanted to. So looking at that, you have the bottom hole, you have this drop that you obviously want to boof. Okay, what besides that is the consequence? Now, for me, my thought process was this first drop. If I mess up my boof and I don't do well in the first drop, obviously it's pretty much guaranteed I'm going into the second drop, right? So if I messed it up and stayed in my boat, I was like, okay, I can get into this eddy, I can get out of my boat, and I can just walk the rapid, whatever. If for some reason I mess up and I surf out on the other side, there's also a little eddy right over here that I could have got. That's kind of my plan B for if the first drop went wrong, which Xna'd a decent amount of, okay, what happens if I swim the second drop? Because I was like, okay, I have these plans. And also I set up a live bait right here in case I did swim through the second drop, just so I wouldn't swim the third drop. So that's kind of was my thought process with the first drop of like, okay, it's definitely big, but I still have options. Now, this second drop's where it got spicier, obviously, because not only is this a really big hole, but this wave hole is actually pretty maunchy and really wants to maunchy. I should use better words than that, but I hope you guys get what I mean. But it also is like really good for killing your speed. So that was a big concern for me. It was not even the second boof, but this wave hole right here. So I spent a really long time looking at it and I discovered there's like a little green pulse like right through here. And I really, really wanted to hit that. So then I was like, okay, obviously if I'm swimming actually on the right, I don't know if you guys can see it because that part of my screen's blocked, but on the right, there is another live bait set up for if I swim in this bottom hole because that bottom hole is really, really, really scary and bad. So that was kind of like, okay, these are all the consequences. Obviously, it's very, very high consequence if something does go wrong. So then in my head, I was like, okay, so I have these three parts. Can I do the top drop? Yes, I'm confident that I can pull a really big boof and top. This again, I was like, yes, it's gonna be hard, but yes, I can do the middle drop. And then it was like, okay, am I confident that I can boof the third drop? Yes, cool. So then I sat for about an hour, probably, maybe a little less, looking at what the water was doing in between each drop. So this first drop, I would land in this kind of little wave train, and I figured out that I wanted to be just to the right of the wave train. And that's another thing I really like to do. I like to get Mars. Mars is really, really big and important for me because it makes it so you get less lost. So like even when I'm on a river, once I've done a river a few times, I'll have markers, like whether it's a weird tree or sometimes I'll actually even use waves as markers, which is pretty hard. But there's some, like when you really get to know a river, there's some waves that like you always know they look a little different. You're like, oh yeah, that's my wave. Okay, I need to go right. So I use like this little baby wave train at the top to be like, okay, I need to be just to the right of this wave train, and that's going to line me up perfect to hit that green spot that I want in the second drop. And then I was like, okay, so there's not really any water pushing any specific direction up here, so that's good. So then I go here. All the water is pretty much pushing over to this left spot. So I knew that once I made it, that I make it and do the boof here. It's like, okay, so I need to come through this green spot, use that or allow that pillow to bring me left, and then actually turn my boat back towards, it would be our right, but it would be river left shore. So I can boof this hole to the left, because obviously there's no way that I could boof it straight because then I would be side surfing a really big, scary hole. And I'm sorry, that is my insulin pump beeping really loud, so I'll just quiet that down really quick. Anyway, so then I was like, okay, third drop. What's the water doing there? Obviously, the water isn't giving any outflow at all. There's no green water, so that's a big, scary thing. So I kind of acknowledged that. I was like, okay, I cannot mess up my boof on the bottom drop. Next, up in here in between the second and the third drop, what's the water doing? Pretty much, luckily, nothing. It's kind of, you can see there's a little bit pushing in from our left, and there's kind of just a little bit of calm water almost in the middle and over towards our right. So like, okay, there's nothing crazy there. You know, there wasn't really any plan Bs for this one. But that's kind of that's where my head was, like, okay, I can do all this. This is what the water's doing. This is what I'm gonna do. This is plan B. And from beyond that, I was okay, you know what? For the consequences, like they're high, but they're worth it because I think that I can, you know, do this without messing up. And if I do mess up, I have the proper safety in place to have minimal consequences. Beyond that, I forgot to mention that I really like to focus on keystrokes. So for me, my keystrokes for this were going to be obviously the boof stroke and the top drop, a stroke through this wave, a boof stroke over this hole, and then getting as much speed as I could in between here to then do a really, really delayed boof on here. And normally I'll pick, for most big rapids I'll pick which side I want to be doing these strokes on. Sometimes I don't. It kind of varies rapid to rapid, but I'll just play it really quick since I have randomly teased you through the video. I'm sure you guys have seen this. If not, it's scary. But yeah, so like here, I do my boof and I'm like, perfect, make it right over to this right or this left side of that wave train. And then go through, that takes me over to our right, just the way I wanted it to. These are really big holes. And then I get my speed back up and boof through the bottom hole and then celebrate mildly too early. But, you know, we'll ignore that. Next up, this is another big rapid that I have. Unfortunately, this video is in slow motion and I couldn't get it out of slow motion because, like I said, I'm not very techy. But this is Untouchables on the Fantasy Falls section in California. So if you haven't heard of this rapid, it's pretty crazy. So basically, I was really, really scared to run this rapid. It's probably more lower consequence in all reality than a lot of really big rapids are, especially in California. But I was there when my friend, the first time I did this section, my friend actually ran it upside down. So this rapid was really, really scary and very much so out of my comfort zone for me. But this year, you know, I saw it and it was really bugging me because I was terrified of it, but I saw a line. And so part of me wanted to do it. And part of me was like, why would you want to do that? That looks awful. So I had a very long, I actually think I did about 4 fantasy runs of just like, we'd get to Untouchables and I would just stare at it, before I finally decided to run it. But basically, so there's a lot of stuff going on in this rapid. So you have this entry, which has a curler here, which is pretty major. You have a mild, awkward, like kind of undercut thing over here, a hole here, another curler here, and then that's just like the first move pretty much. So basically, I was looking, and the top part was the part that really concerned me, just because if you messed up the top part, you pretty much were on a ride of your life, to the end. But the only reason I actually ended up running the rapid was because I was up there and I was thinking about it. I was like, okay, I see the line. I know my plan Bs, and unfortunately the plan Bs for this rapid aren't great because it gets really gorged out, and you'll see that soon. But I have like my line and I know I can do it. And then I was thinking about it, I was like, I don't really want to do it. But then I was like, I do want to do it. And also, everything flushes out at the bottom. So in all reality, like I've seen horrible things happen in this rapid. Like I've seen people run it upside down, backwards, half upside down, backwards, swimming. And in the end, like, yeah, it was kind of a traumatic swim. They were a little waterlogged, but in the end, they all flushed out at the bottom. So it's like, okay, there's no sieves, there's no major holes that I need to get live baited out of. You know what, I think I want to run it. So that was like a really big part, it was fairly minimal consequence in the grand scheme of things. So after I'd kind of considered the consequence, that's when I really was like, you know what, okay, I'm gonna run it. So I broke it down. So this top part was really concerning for me because that's where my friend had messed up that I watched. So I was really fixated on this, and I had to like stop myself. And I was talking about that target fixation. I actually had to stop myself from staring at this for too long because I definitely started overthinking it. So in my head, I was like, okay, you know what? I know how to boof curlers. So I'm going to boof this curler take like on a righty, I think I was thinking, and then I'm going to boof this next curler with the left, and then I'm going to control it back, because you want to make it, once you get through this next curler, you want to make it all the way back over here. We call it riding the dragon. But so I was like, okay, you know what? I can see myself taking these certain strokes to get myself over these curlers without, I was really concerned about having my tail grab and like flipping over backwards, because I was paddling a loaded kayak at the time as well. So you have extra weight in your stern. So I was like, okay, you know what? I can see myself doing these strokes. That's the first section. I know I can do that. So then I moved on to the second section, which is pretty much riding this big, crazy, scary thing. So you basically just ride down this, and it's like, okay, you know what? You don't actually boof this section. So that's pretty easy. You basically just hold on, keep the boat straight. You know what? I can do that. And then it was like, okay, I have the calm section here where I can catch my breath. That's good. And then the next part, which unfortunately you can't see in the video very well, you have to crawl out to this tiny rock to even be able to scout it. But the next section is basically a hole, and you have to be on the left side of the hole to then drive really, really hard back right. And I was like, you know what? I can get left of the hole because there's a large, you know, kind of mellow section above it. That's my reset time. I can go paddle left, and then I can be ready to have this really aggressive left to right drive as I go. So that's a consequence, is like maybe getting stuck in an eddy in here. But then I looked at the water. I was like, you know what? It's pulsing out pretty hard. There's a tongue on the left side that you can't see. That's not actually that bad. So I was like, okay, last part of the rapid, which is part, is like, okay, I need a really aggressive drive back left to right, obviously. Ideally, I want to get as high onto this rock as I can. But I had seen a lot of videos, and obviously this wasn't my line, but I'd seen a lot of videos of people going into this hole and then into this hole, and they always popped out down at the bottom and into the slide. And, you know, some people swam, a lot of people just were underwater for a while and rolled back up. So I was like, okay, you know what? That's not actually that big of a consequence. And I believe that I can make this aggressive move back from left to right. So that's kind of where a lot of my thought process was. And then I also had a bunch of people. I think I had like 2 ropes, 1 live bait set up in here, because sometimes you can go into an eddy over here and you just get pulled out. It's not that big of a deal. So yeah, so that's a little, just to give you guys a visual of how I actually break down all that information that I just gave you. And I won't use this last one because it's in all slow motion. But yeah, so I think I'm okay to open it up to questions now, if I can figure out how to stop sharing. There we go. And yeah, so hit me with all the questions you guys have.
Well, and Sage, I turned off your video let me get you back on video. Let's figure that out. Or you can get yourself back on video. Can you?
Let me see. I am blocked from starting video right now.
Oh no, I hope I didn't turn you off forever.
It's fine. It's okay. I get it. You don't want to see my face.
No.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, there was
Alrighty, I think I'm back.
There's a lot of discussion in the oh, I don't have my video on either. There was a lot of discussion in the chat about sometimes you would, and so we were trying to like get every word as clear as possible from Sage Donnelly.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. I tried to fix the Wi-Fi as best I could. It's been working great, of course, until 5 minutes ago.
Until there's 200 people on your Zoom call. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that might be part of it.
Yeah, that could be the other part of it. So everyone, and the other thing, Sage, you know, it's not a LCCC Zoom talk unless I mess it up. So I didn't hit the record button as early as I should have. So for the folks that are watching the recording, I apologize. But I think I hit it pretty quickly after I realized, or after you got started. So do folks have questions? Before we just open it up to any question in the world for Sage, I'm curious if there are questions specific to breaking down rapids. And I'm also wondering if I could call on Teresa or Will or even Dan, some of my fellow board members, to do a little summary of what you heard at the top of the hour while I wasn't recording, so you can help catch up the folks that might be joining us late.
I even took notes.
Oh, Teresa, give it to us.
I mean, you can't get it all, but here's what I got. I didn't really get the distinct steps. It all kind of merged together, but breaking down the rapid into pieces, and you like the 3-piece version, the top, the middle, and the bottom. And then looking for moves and consequences and stopping places in each section. And you like to have one backup plan for each move that you have to make. I don't know how you get by with just one backup plan. And then you need, go ahead.
I guess it sort of is 2 backup plans technically, because you have your backup plan of like, oh, I'm just a little bit offline, and obviously the safety that you're setting would technically be your second backup plan. So
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the next thing on my list is you want your safety set in the right places. You got to feel it, right? You don't just see the line, you have to feel good about it. And then the whole part about looking at the water and really studying what the water does.
Yeah, the studying the water part, the studying the water part for me is huge, because there's so many little currents that you can overlook, and that's what'll really get you. So yeah, really looking at what every little piece of water is doing, and not like, you don't have to focus on it super hard, but just kind of noting like, oh, okay, like this is obviously naturally going back to the right. That's where probably I'm going to end up, unless I have a really aggressive, like a lot of speed going right to left to kind of counteract that, and sometimes that's what you have to do.
Perfect. Sage, I'm going to read out some of so we do have definitely some questions coming in the chat. So one from Terry Griner: when you're looking at a rapid, do you plan where you are going to paddle, like literally where you're going to place your stroke? Do you pre-plan your strokes?
I do. So I was talking about those key strokes. So that's what I meant by that. So, having obviously the key strokes for those rapids specifically were more boost strokes. But like, yeah, I was planning. So on the Untouchables line, there was like my left stroke and then a right stroke through those top 2 curlers. So I don't focus on every single stroke, because I think then you start overthinking, and it's really, really easy to overthink rapids. And that's when you start having problems. Because basically, if you can like talk yourself out of the fear by acknowledging the consequences and being like, yes, there are consequences. I can do it, and I have options in case something goes wrong. I feel like if you focus on those, and then I basically try to just push all of the negative and the fear to the back of my head. Like, it's definitely still there, but I managed to kind of acknowledge, be like, okay, moments, center myself, and then it's like, okay, now it's time to look at all the positive things of like, this is the strokes I want to take, like the key strokes. So I normally, for a big rapid, I'd probably plan 5 or so key strokes. And then those are the ones I'm focusing on. So it's like, okay, paddle, 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 this stroke. Yes. Okay. Paddle, 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 this stroke. Okay, cool. That's kind of what I like to think about it as.
Perfect. Thank you. Stephanie Castlewhite. Hello, Stephanie. Hopefully you joined. No, just kidding. Can you talk about what you do when you've had a bad swim and still have to regroup for the rest of the run?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. So that one's hard because it's all mental. But basically what I like to do is, okay, you swam, have your moment, have your cry, whatever you need to do. And then basically I try to give myself 1 to 2 minutes of just like, oh my God, that was awful. And then you have to flip that switch in your brain of just like, okay. And I use breathing a lot. So, you can practice even in like class 2 of just like, okay, I'm taking in a deep breath. I'm letting all my thoughts out, and then I'm going and I'm doing this move. So that, I think practicing stuff like that really helps, because it makes it so your body knows and your mind knows when you clear your head, it's staying clear and it's time to go. So when I've had that traumatic swim, or even like a bad line, I've had it happen where I'm like, oh my God, that was terrifying, I don't want to keep going. Obviously there's, and in all reality, you have a couple options. Like you can always hike out, pretty much always. Or, you can wait a little bit and, breathe and center yourself. And I think the important part is acknowledging like, okay, that happened. Don't stress about why. That's not the time. Don't stress about like what you could have done better. Acknowledge that later when the run's over, and then improve on it after the run's over. But I think to get yourself through the rest of the run is just really clearing your head, turning off all of those alarm bells that are going off in your head, and being like, okay, no, like we're done thinking, it's go time, I'm finishing the rest of the run. And then just kind of shutting down all of those anxious thoughts until you're off the river, and then you can be like, okay, time to work through it now.
Perfect. Thank you. Sage, do you think, oh, where'd it go? Do you think that play boating, do you think that play boating has helped you in creeking?
I definitely think I think all of the disciplines I've done, because I've competed in creeking, freestyle, and canoe and kayak slalom. So I think every single discipline I've done has really, really helped the other. So freestyle specifically, it made me incredibly comfortable with the water. It made it so I knew how to surf out of every single hole that I get stuck in. Like, I'll go down the North Fork of the Payette, and I don't know if all of you guys have seen that river, but basically it's huge. And there's holes everywhere, and sometimes you forget where a hole is, and you end up in one. And I've seen my friends all like, be in one, I'm getting kind of kicked around, and I surf out of it, and they're like, how did you surf out of that? I've literally swam out of that hole. And it's like, I've spent like so much time just being comfortable in holes and understanding how they work, and also practicing form while surfing your like whatever hole you're in. Doing freestyle really helps a lot as well, because instead of when you get into a hole, it's everyone's like automatic reaction is to lean back and like plant your paddle, and that actually anchors you down into the hole. So practicing the proper form, and there's a ton of YouTube videos on this, where the proper form is to actually edge upstream, there's like a C, this is really hard to show over Skype, there's like a C you can do with your body, and look upstream and have an active paddle blade. And looking upstream and the active paddle blade are the most important thing, because that's what's going to get you out of the hole. So going out and practicing that, even if you don't have a play boat, I think is super, super helpful for your river running.
Thank you. What are some ways to improve reading water and studying water, and then in parentheses, other than the obvious time on the water?
Obviously, time on the water does help. But looking, like I was talking about those tiny little currents earlier, looking at them and acknowledging them. So you can even take like your local run and break it down as much as you can. And like, obviously like catching all these eddies and stuff, but not only like catching eddies, but getting in the eddy and looking like, okay, where is the water going around this eddy? Like the rock that's creating this eddy, where is the water going around me? What's it doing? And just noting every single piece of water and observing where it's going as much as you can, and just practicing that over and over and over, to the point you're going to get to the point where you can, see like a boil somewhere and be like, that's going to happen if I go there.
Perfect. Teresa, and you might just be being a participant now, which is awesome, but if you see questions that I'm missing, let me know. Will too. I think Will's still there, but what?
Can I actually answer this rafting question from
Yes,
Rachel
that's the
really
next
quick?
one. Go for it.
Sweet. So I raft guided on some a class 4 section on the Payette all summer, and I found that the reading the water part really helped me. So being able, like, for me, it wasn't, oh my God, I'm in a raft, like everything's different kind of thing. To me, it was just, I had to learn how to use the water in a different craft. So like when I was first, doing my practice runs, and I'd never paddle guided a raft before in my life. But basically I would kind of just shove myself into waves and holes and like curling waves and on eddy lines. And the other guides who were kind of like teaching me or supervising me, they'd be like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? And I was like, well, I want to be able to run these rapids consistently. And if I have all of these, brand new customers that I'm rotating through, I can't rely on them. So I'm going to have to rely on using the water to get the boat places. So the same things of like looking at where all the little currents are, and then combining that with just experimenting about where you're putting your raft. And this works for kayaking as well, obviously. So experimenting, like putting you're putting yourself into a hole or a wave or something like that, that really, really helps with just like rapids everywhere. And that's where those plan Bs become a lot easier as well.
Thank
If
you.
that answers your rafting question, I hope. Never got an answer a rafting question. It's exciting.
Rachel. Teresa had one, which was, will you run a rapid if there is a high level of uncertainty about what it will do to you? In other words, if you haven't seen anyone else run it ever, or yeah, you have limited information about it.
Yeah, so there's one rapid that is a first ascent. And last year I was looking at doing it and I ended up not doing it because it was this thing where it's like, I am pretty sure I know what's going to happen when I go and do that, but I don't know for certain. And to me, that uncertainty wasn't really worth it last year. Also, a big part of it was I didn't have the best safety crew. We just didn't have enough people to do it. So that kind of also aided in my decision in that. But I think the uncertainty part is huge. And I think when it comes to that, it transfers more from like, can I do this, to it goes more to your trust in your instincts and your own ability.
And that is a different calculation for everyone.
Exactly. And yeah, the trust in yourself obviously comes from just spending time on the water and experimenting with what you can do. Like my dad and I, we spent years and years and years going over to like our local class 2 and class 3 rivers and just catching every single eddy and surfing every wave and using the waves to go over and seeing how like few strokes we could take on moves and stuff like that. And just like exploring your paddling in that way, I think helps you so much in being able to know what you can do.
Yeah. I mentioned the Takeout Talk series, and the next one is again on progression. And we have Jess Matheson. I don't know, you might know her. She and Dan Jimmick own the New Zealand Kayak School. They used to be longtime Otter Bar kayak instructors.
I've definitely heard of her, but I haven't gotten to meet her yet.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. And so she'll be joining us next week or in 2 weeks to talk about progression. And paired up with the talk on progression, our own Teresa Grider has been for years probably, working on this quiz. To kind of help you think about, well, where are you really? Like objectively, really, where are you in your paddling? And there's this one question of Teresa's that I never want to answer honestly, which is about like, do you put yourselves in waves? Like, no, really, do you surf every wave? And I'm like, I don't surf every wave, Teresa. That's what I actually was working with Sage with on, like, 16 months ago.
I remember.
Sage remembers, yeah. So so again, it's it's so different for every person, and you're so right. Like you gotta do all these things on the little waves and the medium waves and the bigger waves, to get more and more data. I need to not let whoever that is share his screen. Oh, here we are. It's not a Lower Columbia Canoe Club talk. If it's, yeah, there we go. Thank you. Let's go back to our questions because a bunch came in. And where's the woman who repeated her question to make sure I saw it? Catherine, I gotcha. How do you balance committing to the move versus, oops, now I'm in plan B activation now?
Totally.
Like, yeah, I guess, yeah.
Right. So generally what I like to do is I like to note my plan Bs and be like, okay, that's good, that's good, that's good. But I don't want to rely on them. So when I get to the top of the rapid, I like I said, I was talking about like really clearing your head. That's the biggest thing for me is I actually I've just practiced it so much. And I think a lot of it has started to it kind of came from racing just because, I would overthink my racing so much that I developed this thing just to turn my brain off. So it's rolled over into like running all these big rapids really easily. And I wish I could remember what I did before that, but I was young and I forget. But oh shoot, I completely lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
Balance committing to the move versus whoops,
Yes.
now I'm in plan
Yes,
B.
right. Thank you so much. Sorry
No,
about
it's
that.
okay.
So yeah, so I think turning off my brain, basically when I do that and I kind of center myself and I'm like, okay, it's time to go. And I push the consequences out of the way. I push my fears out of the way. Put that all, and I'm like, okay, it's out of my brain. It's gone. I'm only thinking about the line now. That's when I'm like, I'm committing to the line I want to take. And it's definitely, it's hard because you want to like freak out and be like, oh, but you have to actually kind of overcome this flight reflex in your brain and your body. And again, that's just kind of practice. And be like, okay, I'm doing it. And you just go and you push it and you go. And I think I don't actually think about my plan Bs until I need them. So like, if I do the first part of the move and for some reason I'm somewhere I don't want to be, then it's like, okay, bam, to plan B,
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think that I and many others probably go in with like, we're gonna swim.
Oh yeah. It's easy to do. It's so incredibly easy to do. And it's just training your brain over and over and over. And it's
Yeah.
hard, but it's definitely, if it's something you do consistently, it's so helpful.
So, and this segues into Amy's question, which I think is largely answered, but other than deep breaths, what tricks do you have to control fear and anxiety and stay focused, especially when even plan B goes wrong? And I heard you just say, train the brain, train the brain, train the brain.
Exactly. It's all, I mean, kayaking to me is 70% mental, honestly. And it's just, it's working, it's just building a base. So it's working to be able to trust your own skills and have that confidence in yourself to be like, okay, yes, this is scary. I'm worried about doing this, but also being able to go, but you know what? I've put in this work. I've put in this work. I've put in this work. I know I can do this. Like I've practiced this over and over and over. So I think that helps with like the mental side of it a lot, just because you suddenly have this like confidence and this trust in yourself. And then besides deep breaths, I mean, that's the main one over the years that I've stuck with just because it works for me. But I think whatever thing you can do to basically be able to push all of these thoughts and insecurities out of your head is really, really good. So like, I do this, I have a ritual, I do a deep breath in, clear my brain, and then I splash myself 3 times, and then I don't stop. I grab my paddle and I go. And that's kind of just what I do. But I think it's just practicing conditioning your brain to be able to be like, okay, flipping that switch, it's go time.
So funny. No, it's funny that you say that because you and I have a mutual friend in Shannon Finch.
I love Shannon.
I do too. And so Shannon was on the the Grand Canyon, the Colorado River with me recently. And I just watched the video that she made of it. And there's this scene of her in the video with her going, splash, 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 lava, go, And I was just like, oh, I missed the splash, 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 No one told me we were tutus and splash, splash, splash,
I think the tutu probably was the main factor in that helped. I mean, tutus. Also, I forgot to tell anyone this, but it kind of just popped in my brain when you said tutus. One thing that I pretty much always do when I go to do like a hard rapid or I have like a big day on the river, I do war paint. My war paint has evolved over the years. Normally it involves like colored zinc. I really love, and I'll do like stripes. But I also have glitter now that I carry in my PFD, and I'll throw that on too. So that also helps. Just any way you can like loosen yourself up, and it's whether like having a friend around to like dance and whatever. But just making it fun, and then also being able to push the anxiety out of your head. I think those are the 2 best things.
Love it. And I'm going to harp on this just for a second, because the other thing that you said in that answer was, you need to be able to tell yourself that you did the work, right? Which takes us back to Teresa's quiz, because if you can't answer honestly that you did the work, then there is a little bit of that self-assessment about whether or not you're on the right rapid for you.
Exactly. Self-doubt it'll kill you. It'll
Yeah.
kill you so fast. And there's some people, I see so many boaters, they're amazing, but they've developed so much self-doubt that they're like running class 2 and they're class 4 paddlers, which is fine, but they're terrified of it. And it's
Yeah.
like you're creaming this, like this is easy for you, but you're terrified. And it's like, so it's like breaking down all that stuff to just make sure that you can trust yourself and in your skills, I think is really huge.
We have lots more questions. What is your minimum safety crew? I'm guessing that
Yeah.
varies by rapid.
Yeah, it definitely varies per rapid. I'd say if I'm on like a river that I've done a lot, obviously it's going to be less. Like I would say the ideal paddling number is between um probably about 3 to 5. And yeah, I mean, it all depends on the rapid. Obviously, when I did Big Falls, I had a huge safety crew. I had 2 live baits, so that's 2 people each, so that's 4 people. I had 3 people with ropes. I had 2 safety kayakers at the bottom, and then I had a bunch of other people around just to, like, help with stuff. But yeah, it kind of depends. Like, you know, if it's something huge with huge consequences, you want as many people as you can get. But also if you're on like a multi-day river trip or you're on just a normal river trip, obviously the more people you have, the worse it's going to be. So I kind of try to, if I'm like on the Green Narrows or something like that, my ideal number is between 3 to 5, because after that, it gets so chaotic with all the people. And then you have 2 people swimming and then it's like, oh dear, this is bad.
Oh dear. Yeah, that's what they're saying, I'm sure. Horst is asking, and I think you may have just answered this with all those safety people you just talked about, but do you find yourself getting at all complacent or overconfident as your skills get better and better? I don't hear you saying that really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't ever feel that way. I mean, obviously, that's something probably harder to self-identify, but I do like to think that at this point, I'm pretty decent about acknowledging and understanding all the thoughts and feelings I have. Because it is something I've worked on for a while. But I mean, it definitely could happen. I mean, but I am such a big, huge supporter of you have to respect the river because it can do anything it wants to. It's such a powerful, amazing force that you could be in the same spot as you always are and something different could happen. Or you could be on the slightly wrong edge. You could shift your weight slightly wrong and then all of a sudden you're upside down and there's rocks hitting you or something like that. So it's definitely, I err more towards the side of, the river is amazing, and I respect it, and I don't want to get a big head because I think when you do get a big head, it's very, very easy for you to get hurt. So
Yeah, and we don't want that.
definitely.
2 questions related. One is, what do you do for off-season training? And then the other is, what do you do in your time off the river that you think prepares you best for paddling, yoga, workouts, meditation? What kinds of things do you do? And then, hold on, extension of Taylor's question. Do you have any morning rituals that prepare you for a scary, challenging day on the river?
Okay, so I'm going to wrap the first 2 questions all into one. So for off-season training, lifting's really good. Anything with like bench press, pull-ups are amazing. I do deadlifts, squat, obviously, just to keep everything balanced. Bent over rows are also really good because it's working your wings. And I mean, there's so many online workout programs that you can do that now that it's just like, anything that's mixing in weights and body weight is really, really good just for overall fitness. And also core is really helpful. And yeah, as far as like, honestly, I kind of have a little bit more of a mellow winter now just because I've spent my last 7 years training slalom full time. So that was, kayaking and lifting and exercising 8 hours a day every day. So now I'm kind of erring more towards my winters are spent backcountry skiing and mountain biking, which keeps my legs strong. So then I go into hike my kayak season, I call it, in the spring. And I actually can hike up a mountain with my kayak and all my gear, which is nice. But yeah, besides that, like in general, yeah, just kind of working on all those weights and doing more than you think you should. Do a lot of pull-ups. Like just set up a pull-up bar somewhere and just do them all the time. And then
New Year's
for
resolutions.
yeah, right. And then for off the water stuff, I'm to the point in kayaking where all my off water stuff, or most of it at least, I prefer to kind of disconnect from kayaking because I found that when I'm constantly thinking about kayaking, I burn out fairly easily. But that I haven't done that for a lot of years. So stretching helps, yoga helps. I personally love to just get on my mountain bike and go fast. Yeah, just kind of whatever. I just, honestly, anything that's going to get you outdoors and keep you active is going to help with your kayaking in the long run. So,
Perfect.
and
Thank
then what
you.
was that third question? I'm sorry about that.
Oh, what was the third question? It was an extension of
I'm
the.
glad I don't remember either.
Oh,
Not
any
being able to
morning rituals that prepare you for a scary or challenging day on the river?
totally. I think creating a ritual before. So like if it's not a multi-day river trip, having the same breakfast, waking up at the same time, anything that's a routine to help trick your brain into thinking that it's just every other day.
I love that. Um, Here's one more on rapids. How heavily do you weigh other people's previous lines when you're planning a rapid and your plan, your choices?
Um, and not incredibly heavy. Because like I said, the river's going to be different every time someone touches it. So you can't, rely on someone's video from a year or even 2 years ago, because it's not the same river in all reality. Also, I find that because I'm generally lighter weight than most paddlers, that the water reacts differently. So I use it kind of as a base to get an idea of generally where I want to go. I don't really look at the strokes they're taking at all. Um, and yeah, I base like a combination of kind of what I've observed, and I focus a lot on their mistakes as well to see what I want to avoid doing. I'd say I put more weight into that than anything else, which sounds super mean and awful and judgy, but I promise I'm not. But yeah, I think looking at like, oh, they went left. I want to be right there. Why did that happen? And how can I prevent that? I think I look at more than this is what I need to do kind of thing.
Love it. Um, we had said that we would be here till 7:15 Pacific Standard Time. No, it's perfect. And so I see at least two more questions that we haven't gotten to. And so I'm thinking I'm gonna wrap us up with the two that are left. Um, but this will not be the last question. This is the second to the last question. What was your worst, most difficult experience on the river, and how did you shake it off? Anything besides what you've already said?
Ooh, I'll have to just give me
Not
2 seconds to
absolute
think
worst.
about that. Holy
Yeah.
moly. um, I would say so. The first year I went to Green Race was back in I think 2014 or 2015. I think it was 2014 though, but I could be wrong. And basically I was training short boat. I was planning to race short boat. Randomly got in my longboat one time before the race. It was like a day before the race, and the longboat lap went really well. So I decided to race both. Um, and basically what happened, the whole entire race went pretty dang well. And then I got to the second to last rapid where I went off the slide funny, flipped over, went to roll up, missed my roll because I was against a wall, rolled up onto like a rock, got flipped over again. And when I rolled up, I was on a log pinned above the last drop. So I swam. So that actually, I didn't go back to Green Race until 2020. And I found that it actually followed me all through the years. And I had a lot of stuff to work through. So I would say that was pretty hard for me just because, I swam this super rocky slide. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen the last drop at Green Race. It's not great. Don't recommend swimming it. But that was hard. I wouldn't say directly after it was hard to get back into kayaking. Just because I think I went back and I did freestyle and stuff, which obviously is a completely different world. But I definitely did find that when I went back to the race, I was terrified. And yeah, it took me a while to work through it just because I was like, I didn't want to do race runs. I didn't want to go fast because I was worried about swimming. And I was like, but I've improved so much as a paddler. So I had to kind of work through that. And that was definitely interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because it's also it's like, were you terrified the next time you got in your boat on a different river on a different day in a different situation in a different boat versus how scary must it have been to face the green again, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And you do kind of need to compartmentalize and say, well, that was the green on that day in that boat at that flow. I'm good to
Exactly.
go on everything else.
Yeah.
I'm still awesome, and I'll just, perseverate on that one moment on that one river.
Yeah.
So then so in my mind, because I don't pay attention to these things, I'm sorry, you just busted onto the scene in 2021 and won the whole thing. And I just heard you say, actually, no. So you raced it in 2020
Mm-hmm.
and then you
Yeah.
won it
So
in 2021.
yeah. So I came back. I decided to quit slalom in spring of 2020, and retire from that. And yeah, after that, it was pretty much I want to go creek and I want to do big rivers. And so yeah, I did like Selway Falls and I was able to do big falls and all that. And I was on the North Fork of the Payette all the time. And then it kind of got to fall and I was like, I mean, they haven't canceled the green race. I guess I should go out. Because it was kind of like, okay, well, what else am I gonna do? So I went out there and as soon as I got on the river, I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna try to win this year. This is scary. I don't like this. I'm just gonna paddle. And actually, then I got in my head later on that I was like, I'm gonna try to win. And at that point, it was just this brain cluster of just negative, bad energy. I was terrified for the race. I was overthinking all of my paddling. So yeah, 2020 was not a good year. And actually coming into green race this year in 2021, I pretty much was like, you know what? I don't really like this race. It's not my thing. It's rocky. It's in a longboat. I'm just gonna do it, whatever. And then yeah, and then I won. So now I don't want to go back because I'm like, now I'm gonna put pressure on myself again. It's gonna be a disaster.
Well, and yeah, and oh gosh, Sage, and when you won, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had also just won the two others, the North Fork. Okay, yeah. And so were you thinking when you went into it Triple Crown, or were you just thinking, no, green, just I hate you. I'm scared of you.
I didn't know the Triple Crown was a thing until after green race.
Okay.
Yeah, I had no plans. I pretty much, yeah, I mean, winning North Fork was a really huge goal for me. I'm really stoked I did, but it was kind of after that race. And I also, I just want to note that I have a horrible racing. Yeah, I
Actually,
really
Sage,
hard with that. So I basically went into
hold that thought because you broke up and I want to know what you said. You have a what? A horrible.
Okay. I have a horrible mental capacity for racing. So the mental tricks that I use that work really well for running big rapids, they don't help me at all for my races. So that's something that I've been working really hard on trying to work through in 2021, just because, 2020, I was fresh off racing all the time and I was in a really, really bad mental place with all of that. And that's why I decided to stop with slalom. And yeah, so then I, went to green race, had a bad time and was like, meh, I hate racing. So yeah, went into NFC and was just like, you know what, this is my river. Like, I'm just going to try to paddle. And, of course I was super mentally stressed and I think I raced to my best ability at the time, but yeah, it definitely was not the race run I wanted to put down. So then going out to like Russell Fork and green race, I was like, you know what, these are both longboat races. I was miserable at NFC because I was, overthinking everything. I'm just going to kind of try to take as much of a step back as I can, which isn't very much for me, and just try to have fun. And I wouldn't say I accomplished it super well, but I'm getting there.
I can only imagine how well you're doing. Sage, the very last question for you, and then we'll have a few closing remarks, but it's more just, futuristic. Like what's on your to-do list, your goal list for 2022? Oh, apart from come do a clinic out in Oregon for the Lower Columbia Canoe Club. That's on your list, right? Wink,
All right,
wink.
that could be on my list. I can make that happen.
You know how we can
Can
make
it
that
can it
happen,
be
Sage?
around Little White? Because then I'll definitely be in the area.
Let's do it. Let's do it. And
Okay.
the way that we can ensure that that happens is if we get a few more memberships. Because while you have volunteered your time with us tonight, there is no way in the world we would expect you to volunteer to do a clinic with us. And so, of course, we would want to pay you top dollar. And for that, we probably need just a few more people to join the Lower Columbia Canoe Club, which gives you all of this amazing free programming. And I did check. I want to say thank you already to it looked like 12 or 14 people who had signed up. They weren't joining while you were talking. They were probably joining while we were voting at the beginning of the hour. And I know a lot of you that are still with us are going to hang up and join. So I just want to say thank you. I appreciate that so much. So apart from doing a clinic right around the Little White, what's on your agenda for 2022? What are you excited about?
Oh, got a lot of stuff. I have I really, really want to do, and this is all these are really big goals for me. So it's, it's gonna be when I get into the river and it feels right, and it happens, then it happens. But it's definitely stuff that I have on my radar. I would love to be able to do a fantasy flush, which is running all of the really big scary rapids on Fantasy Falls. If you Google Dane Jackson fantasy flush, he's done it. And I really want to do Middle Kings, which honestly, it's like, obviously it's a big river. It's one of the biggest rivers in California. But it's less of like the river part and more of it's an 11-mile hike in over a huge pass. And with my diabetes, that's going to be like really hard. So doing that is a big goal, just to be like, you know what? Yeah, I can do it. Like, it was hard. I'm going to have someone like hike in just to help me carry enough food for me to do it. But so yeah, that's on my radar as well. And then I'm hoping to go up and run the Stikine for my first time, and hopefully the ALSEC, but I'm having a really hard time getting permits. So we'll see how that goes. And then, yeah, doing NFC again. Hopefully, I'm hoping Colorado opens up some of its creek races again, hopefully. So going down there maybe. And yeah, just trying to do everything.
Oh my gosh, Sage. I know someone already put it in the chat, but it was like, oh, to be 20 again. The Lower Columbia Canoe Club is our average age is a little older than 20. And I think a lot of us got both exhausted, terrified, of course, but exhausted just listening to you. I want to thank you. I want to wish you like the absolute best of luck. I don't think it's going to be about luck for you in 2022. You are you would score really well on Teresa's quiz. You put the work in, and honestly, Sage, I might want to send you Teresa's quiz just to get your feedback on it.
Oh, definitely.
It'd be fun. I'm sitting here thinking, I know I saw your mom she left a little chat. So I think,
yeah, she's also been trying to text me this entire time. I'm like, Mom,
no,
I'm trying to talk, Mom.
She needs to stop doing that. Well, I was going to say it's funny because my feelings on my own personal paddling career have shifted throughout the last hour. I started paddling in my 40s, and then I had my experience with you, and I say to anybody who will listen, oh my gosh, I wish I had started when I was in my 20s. I wish I'd started earlier. And now what I wish that my daughter were somebody like Sage Donnelly who would teach me, because your mom, no, it's true. Your mom left a comment in the chat, and she was like, Sage is helping me work on making class 2 rivers feel like class 4 rivers. And I was like, Zoe, Owen, my kids. So it's been just such an absolute pleasure to host you. Hopefully this is the first and not the last time that you'll visit us online or in person. And, we did hit the record button, so we'll get the recording out to folks who missed it, and even folks who just, want to watch it again. And I thank everyone so much for joining us tonight. If you're new to the club, this is pretty typical for how the talks go, whether it's a safety talk or a skill talk like this one. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you so much, Sage. Really, truly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome.
Yes, thank you, Sage.
Good
Thanks
night,
so much.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you, everyone. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Sage.
Oh my gosh, Teresa Greider.
Oh, no way. Jocelyn Coggin watched? I know her too.
You probably know a lot of people, I'm guessing.
Holy moly.
It was, I mean, they're all saying goodbye and good night, but oh my gosh, Sage, there were over 200 people at a certain point. And that was right around the time I realized I forgot to push record. And so I need to tell Will, that's your job. You're supposed to remind me. I never told you that was your job, but that needs to be your job.
Well, no, Teresa reminded you yesterday or the last time.
Right.
Her job.
Oh my God. What is it going to take?
I tell you, I was busy the whole time admitting 200 people.
I know you were. I wrote at the top of my notes, hit record next time.
Great.
Oh my gosh. If
Hey,
that happens-
I've got to say, I didn't
At least you tried.
know, Sage, I didn't know that you have diabetes. And I want to say if you have type
Yes.
1, my son has type 1 as well. And man, you're
Oh,
an
no way. I do
inspiration.
have type 1. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have type 1 celiac disease and thyroid disease.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, he's got celiac
Bring
as
it
well.
Yes.
Wow.
Another one.
Yeah, eating must be hard on
That's
your
awesome,
traveling.
Kayak.
No, he does not. On purpose.
Oh, gotta get him into it.
Oh, you
On
know,
purpose. What?
well, you know, it just didn't go over well when he was a young one. And